This episode is brought to you by MPB. Get cash for the kit you're not using or trade it in for the gear you want at mpb.com. Hey folks, in this episode, we're going to be tackling some of the most popular photo and video questions from somebody at the center of all this, Tauhidah Abdul from MPB. This is TWiP. Hey, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. I've got Tauhidah Abdul on the hot seat here. She's from MPB, who's a sponsor of This Week in Photo. And we're going to be talking about some of the most popular trends that she's seen that are coming through the market, and what people are renting, or no, what people are exchanging their gear for. What are they buying? What are they not buying? What should you be considering when you're looking at upgrading your camera or other gear to the next level? Tauhidah, welcome to This Week in Photo. How's it going?
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. This is going to be a good conversation. You and I were just chatting a little bit in the green room about, kind of how we'd approach this interview. There's so much to talk about. But before we do that, before we dive in, people may have been hearing at the top and the tail of many of the TWiP episodes over the last couple of weeks or months here, the MPB advertisement. So MPB is a sponsor of This Week in Photo. I wanted to have you on to kind of explain a little bit about what MPB is and what they do, because they're kind of they're one of the most important companies that are out there for photographers, but not a whole lot of photographers know about them. They're like a really well-kept secret, but they should not be a secret, which is why we're doing all this stuff. So explain what MPB does and why photographers should be taking a look at the site.
Yeah, for sure. So MPB is the platform to buy, sell, and trade used photo and video equipment, which includes camera bodies, lenses, and accessories. We are committed to making kit more accessible and affordable and doing it in a more sustainable way. We're a global company. We're based in Brooklyn, Brighton, and Berlin, which are very big communities for creatives. Our team includes trained camera experts, seasoned photographers, videographers. Each piece of kit that enters our facility is carefully inspected by our product specialists. It includes 6 months warranties and also 2-week return windows. So we genuinely care about making kit accessible to creatives on all sorts of levels and across 3 really amazing markets.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Okay, so just to get this straight, because I have to ask a selfish question, because it's all about me, right? So,
of course.
So if I'm someone who has a bunch of gear that I've accumulated over the years, and a lot of it's sitting in drawers, lenses that I haven't shot with in years, and camera bodies that mock me because they're depreciating every time I look at them, correct me if this is the right perspective to be looking at MPB. I look at MPB as kind of they end the idea of the one-way street with your gear. In other words, it used to be you buy gear and I got that forever, and maybe I'll give it to my kid or my nephew or somebody down the line. But this is an investment that I'm going to own for a long time and suffer the depreciation because, it's going to be with me for the long haul. I look at MPB as the shattering that myth, and now it doesn't have to be like, okay, that gear is going to sit in a drawer. I can now harvest that gear and kind of melt it down into cash and get something that's more current or that's more fitting with my current tangent of photography. Is that an accurate way to look at the company?
That is an extremely accurate way to look at the company. Gone are the days of feeling like you are stuck with, your kit forever. Not only can you, send it all in to get cash, you can also send it all in to get something that we might have in stock that, you might want to add to your kit or the kit that you're not getting rid of. I think the one of the biggest struggles for a lot of artists is finding kit affordable, being able to, have different lenses and other accessories at your disposal. And I think MPB has made it extremely more accessible than it's been in the past. As someone who started photography in the early 2000s, you know, getting a new lens was like a really, really big deal because of the limited options you had to buy things, secondhand. It just weren't that many options. So everything came brand new out of a box. But I feel like those days are really, really numbered.
No, absolutely. And it seems like the MPB company is there at the right time, because you look at the glitzy and polished marketing for every new camera that comes out, and it seems like a new one's coming out like every month or every other month, and new lenses and new everything. There's all this stuff, and I can see from a beginner's perspective, it's confusing. And what I've seen on This Week in Photo, like interviewing photographers and talking to photography enthusiasts, is the flow tends to be, okay, I'm into photography. What's my genre? Okay, I like landscape photography. Let me find landscape photography tutorials or people that I admire on YouTube or something, and then buy what they got. Right? That's instead of, it's the path of affinity versus research. It's like, okay, I like that, and Joe McNally shoots Nikon. I'm going to shoot Nikon, and I'm going to get the lenses and the strobes that Joe shoots with. But then the next step is how to get all that stuff. So, to switch gears a little bit and I don't want to make this all about MPB, but I genuinely have questions because I have a box of gear that I'm about to send in. So what does that flow look like? Now, I've sold I think 2 camera bodies, or I've sent 2 camera bodies into MPB, and I was really impressed with the experience. It was seamless. It was easy. The money showed up in my account, and I was like, holy crap. But what is it behind the scenes? What does it look like once I go ahead and I drop that box off at FedEx and you guys get that box? What's happening? In my head, I see a white room with people in white bunny suits with white gloves, carefully opening my box with a super sharp knife and opening it up and taking out the precious cargo and then looking at it with a microscope and all that. Is that kind of what happens, or is it a little less dramatic than that?
It's a little less dramatic. However, the individuals that are responsible for ensuring that everything that, enters and exits the building is in perfectly, good working order, and that we're, making sure that customers are getting things that are completely, intact and accurate to the descriptions that are on our website. For the most part, all of our staffs are creatives. So that is the kind of the additional sort of thing that makes MPB so unique, is that everyone there is a creative and in their own capacity. So they're extremely passionate about making sure that, other people who are buying things from us are likely other creatives. So that just makes the job all that more fulfilling. So what usually happens is, every day we get in, tons of equipment. The process usually looks like the items end up on a desk, essentially. It's carefully inspected through a chain of sort of like processes that we have in place, just to ensure that each item, the quality control is, up to par. And then these items make their way into our lovely warehouse. And then, they end up on the doorsteps of everyone else.
The next person. Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, the process is ultimately pretty seamless. And that's what, allows us to have such a quick turnaround with, processing all of the different equipment that comes into the warehouse. And same thing goes for the video equipment too, not just, photo. Our video checking process is slightly more detailed, just because video equipment tends to be on the much higher end side of things. But we do have a dedicated video specialist that is evaluating all of the cinematography gear that comes into the warehouse. So we are very meticulous. And the thing is, the very unique part of it all is that the individual that is the video specialist is a videographer. So that just makes everything just flow in a much more organic way. And
Yeah.
people, and we can actually speak to, you know, the quality that comes out of our warehouse.
Love it. What's in that warehouse, Tahiti? Is it just, is it still cameras and cameras, or do we have cameras, drones, 360 cameras, lighting, all that stuff, or are you strictly cameras?
No, we have it all. We have everything from video equipment to cameras. You know, just still photography cameras and video. We have drones. We have RE kits, red cameras,
Wow.
360 cameras, GoPros, you know, lighting, pro photo lighting.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
we
Okay.
we have. I feel like we cover most of the bases when it comes to what, you know, creatives need and what they're looking for.
Love it. Love it. Okay, so let's switch gears. Let's talk about some of the more popular things that you've seen kind of come through that warehouse. And let's look at it through the several different lenses. The first lens will be the portrait photographer, right? So obviously, or maybe not obviously, but there's no one right lens for portrait photography. But is there a popular lens for portrait photography that you've seen kind of coming through over your desk?
Oh yeah. It's so hard to narrow it down to one, but I feel like the number one that just never seems to fail is the 85 millimeter easily. Just because the depth of field you get, the ability to just like really frame your you know, your portraiture and your subject, it is just like, and it's an essential piece of kit to have. Like,
Yep.
even if you don't specifically shoot portraiture, it is just an amazing, you know, prime lens for distance.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with that. I have a 85, I forget what it is. I think it's a 1.4, but it's a Sigma. And I interviewed the Sigma people on the show a couple of weeks or about a month or so ago. And I learned so much about Sigma, and I would love for you to weigh in on this, because when I went into that interview, I was, you know, I had no ill will towards Sigma or anything. It was like, okay, it's Sigma, third-party lens manufacturer, but I'm a purist. I'm always going to buy the lenses from the manufacturer of the camera that I'm making, because why not? They should know the glass better. I learned that that's not necessarily true, right? So, especially when you're factoring math of budget and all that stuff into the equation, it kind of changes the physics. So I learned that Sigma lenses are some of my favorite lenses now. Just the way that they're built and the fit and finish, and then understanding some of the story behind how those lenses are created and were crafted and the history of the company. Have you seen that as well? I mean, do you see when people are exchanging gear, are there any trends that you can reveal of, yeah, we see a lot of OEM glass coming in and a lot of third-party glass going out, or vice versa, or is it kind of a net zero in the middle?
I definitely feel like a lot of people are beginning to embrace third-party glass a lot more, especially along the lines of like Voigtlander, Sigma. I think people are realizing that, hey, you know what? I don't have to spend nearly as much money to get the quality out of the images that I'm looking for, you know, with, you know, the dedicated manufacturers' lenses. I personally think that Sigma glass is amazing. I love it. It actually is my preferred glass to shoot when I'm working with a DSLR camera.
Yeah.
However, yeah, I think there is, I feel like it's sort of equal. We definitely still get in and sell a lot of you know, Canon, Nikon, Sony, just because I think people are still very dedicated to the brands that they buy into, and I think that's what it is. A lot of people have really strong brand loyalty, so they like to keep it consistent. However, there are people who just like to have very expansive kits, so they'll incorporate, you know, the 135 prime lens from Sigma, or they'll want to have like the Voigtlander lens or a Zeiss lens. Like people are, I definitely think are open to third party glass a lot more these days.
Yeah, yeah, these days, because back in the day, back in the film days, I remember it was very much the, okay, you get third party lenses if you can't afford the real thing, right? That was the kind of sentiment was, oh, you couldn't get the real 85. Oh, so you got that one. And now, maybe
Well,
one day you'll be able to save up and afford the real glass. And it is not that at all. These lenses, those Sigma lenses are just, they're tools. I mean, it is well built, well crafted, and smooth. Focus rings, the
yeah.
whole nine yard is brilliant, and better in some ways, I would argue, than some of the OEM glass I have.
Yeah. And a lot of people used to think that, oh, buying third party means that I'm compromising quality. And that is just really not the case at all,
Yeah.
because I have seen Sigma glass perform in ways that I have never seen, dedicated, brand glasses ever.
Yeah.
So that's why I advocate heavily for people to buy third party if they can, if they want to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think the point there is there's choice, right? You don't have to limit yourself down to this one road. There's another road with other options on it that you could possibly take depending on where your destination is, to continue that analogy. You know what? The other piece, just to close that off, the other thing that I learned was, part of the sentiment back in the day was primes over zoom. Right. And it was, and I still kind of fall into this. I think I will forever. It's like primes are going to be sharper than zoom. But I think the delta between that in that statement is thinner than ever before. A zoom lens of 1985 versus a zoom lens of 2021 is going to be markedly different. Do you disagree with that? Or should photographers still be limiting themselves to primes for portraiture and then zooms only if you have to? That was the sentiment back in the day.
I think having one really, really great zoom lens in your kit is essential. I am a person who prefers all prime glass. However, you can absolutely never go wrong having a 24-70 in your kit, because it covers so much in between a lot of focal lengths. And like, if you're a person who sometimes, the jobs you book or the clients you work with, the situations may constantly be varying, it's always good to just have that option. Or if you don't want to constantly swap between prime lens, you could just put on a 24-70, and then you have like the basics of wide angle, a 35, a 50, and then the longer focal length of a 70, but not quite an 85 yet. So that would be the only instance where I could see like myself taking the zoom lens off, is if I need to shoot even longer than that. But I love a great 24-70 2.8. Like I just feel like it's amazing, especially if you do event photography, if you do wedding photography. It's such a great, versatile, like just all around lens to have.
Well, speaking of all around lenses, what's a good rule of thumb for the all around kit, right? And of course, budgets notwithstanding, it used to be the holy trinity of lenses, right? What was it? The 14 to 24, 24 to 70, and then the 70-200. And then if you could swing it, an 85 and a 50 in the bag, and you're pretty much good for most situations, aside from specialty things where you might need a fisheye or something crazy like that, which you could rent. Is it still that holy trinity with those two extra lenses, or is there a different config that would make up kind of that, quote, ideal photographer's generalist kit?
I feel like that is still pretty much the go-to. If you don't mind having such an array of lenses in your
weight.
kit, exactly. And I know that's a big factor, and that's why I'm kind of the opinion that team zoom lens is always great, just because you may not want to carry your entire kit with you at one time. But I'm of the opinion that, you just really have to examine, what are you really shooting a lot of, and what is a necessity like for you? that's how I usually break it down, because, if it was up to me, I would have every single lens available at every single focal length if I could, but I
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
So like, you just really have to take inventory of like, what do I need? Like what does my, sort of style and,
Genre,
approach
right?
to exactly. And like the genre that you shoot, I feel like it's heavily dependent on your genre of photography.
Yeah.
For most wedding photographers I know, they have almost every focal length you can think of, just because the situations for those types of events are constantly changing and evolving. So,
Yeah.
they need to have all the bases covered.
And they're
Wedding
generating
photography,
revenue, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So, you just need to make sure that like all your T's are crossed and all your I's are dotted. Like you just can't risk not having the right focal length. So, yeah.
What's the here's a hypothetical. You need to go to Tahiti for 3 months, right? And there's no camera stores there, nothing, and you're not exactly sure what you're going to be shooting there. You may have to do a wedding or something there. You may want to do some landscape stuff. You may want to do some aerials, of the area, or whatever your particular genre is. What is in your bag? What are you bringing with you?
So what's going to be in my bag is a Mavic Pro,
Ooh.
a point and shoot, and a DSLR, potentially, because I'm still team DSLR, even though there's mirrorless takeover right now. But
It is.
I'm a DSLR. I'm a traditionalist. I would have a DSLR in me, preferably.
If you're a real
Canon.
traditionalist, you'd be carrying a bag of film. I'm just saying.
So I actually, like, in my professional career, I only shoot film. So that's the funny part.
There you go. Look at that. You're a walking contradiction then. Look at that.
I am a walking contradiction. But if MPB were supplying me with this 3 months worth of kit,
yep,
for me to take to the island of Tahiti, I would have my Mavic. I would have a point and shoot, preferably a Ricoh GR2. And I would have a Canon 5D Mark IV with a 24-70, a 70-200, and a 50 millimeter. That is my kit.
Oh, nice. No 85, huh? So no portraiture.
You know why? Because that 70-200 will cover that 85 millimeter focal length if I need it.
And you gain on losing that heft that you'd have to carry around with that lens. Yeah, that makes sense. Look at that. Okay.
You know what? I'll sacrifice the additional weight to have the 70-200, because when you're shooting on like destination places like that, islands, you always just want to have more just in case.
Yeah.
So it's worth that little bit of weight. And plus, if I brought my RZ with me, it would be the same amount of weight, maybe more. So
yeah. Well, you got to talk about that RZ, because I'm a fan of medium. All right, so I want to ask you about the Ricoh and all that. We're running out of time. You mentioned the travel that Ricoh, right? So is that your go-to for travel? If you were a slightly different hypothetical, you're on a desert island, you could only have one thing with you. Is it going to be that Ricoh?
It's not going to be the Ricoh.
Ooh.
See, that changes because, the 5D was going to make up for all of the things that the Ricoh just couldn't do, because it doesn't have interchangeable lenses.
Yep.
But if I'm stuck with one camera that just can do it all for me, I'm taking that Fujifilm X100V easily.
Oh, yeah.
That is all I'm taking with me. It can fit in my pocket, a wrist strap. You can charge it using USB-C. You don't need a wall outlet. You can charge it with your laptop, a portable charger. It's just like convenience to the max. Wi-Fi capability from the camera straight to the phone. I just can't think of a more reliable camera system, a better lens that's, fixed to the body. It is the perfect point and shoot camera.
Oh, perfect. See, now you're making me want to go get one of those.
I actually just did a review. I just did a review. I took it to Joshua Tree and I did a review for on MPB, um, which people can check out. But I did a full review of the X100V and why it is my favorite point and shoot camera.
Okay, I'm gonna link to that in the show notes after I read it, of course. So thank you. See, I was gonna say thank you for spending my money, but it's like more of thank you for allotting some of the revenue that I'm gonna generate for trading in my other gear. Right? So
Honestly, if you get your hands on that camera, you will see why I think it is absolutely spectacular.
wow. Okay. All right. I will give you a full report after I get my hands on it. What about budget kits, right? So photographers that are, yeah, I want to get into this, but hey, I got $1,000 or $800, or I don't have that much to spend. And, I've been told I'm a good photographer because I make great iPhone shots and I've been posting to Instagram. Now I want to take it up a level, but only got $1,000 to spend. What direction would you point them in?
So the first rule of thumb for me is to look at brands that are releasing a lot of new cameras, a lot of newer technology, because chances are those previous models are super down in price, are way more affordable than they used to be, and will likely still have a lot of the same features that the newer model has. So that's always the first area that I like to sort of examine and look at. Like Sony just continuously, it seems like almost every year they have a new version of like, an A7 camera or the A6000 series. They just always have like a lot of newer things. But I would honestly go for maybe the higher end, the higher end models of lower tier sort of categories.
Mm-hmm.
So like I just said, how Sony has the A7s and the A9s. There's also the A6000 series, and those are absolutely amazing. They're not full frame, but depending, going back to the types of genres you shoot, you have to just assess like what is a necessity for you, what is a mandatory thing that you need out of your camera, what don't you need. If video isn't a primary thing you do, then you don't have to focus on a camera that mostly performs for people who do a majority of video work or majority of, photo. If you're looking for a good in between, you just always want to look at sort of the brand as a focus and then sort of go from there. So like I would just, I personally would recommend a Sony, like a maybe 6400 and then, maybe like a higher end lens. So that's how I'll usually pick. I'll just find a body that's super affordable and then just spend like a bigger chunk of that budget on an amazing overall like lens.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always of the opinion that a lot of what gives you the quality you're looking for in your image is the glass over anything, because people love to harp on megapixels and, those types of things. I don't harp on that when it comes to my work. I feel like it's really, really about the glass when it comes down to it sometimes, but a camera is literally only as good as the person that's using it. So that's also another, it's also another factor as well. But I think that everyone should just examine the brand that they want to commit to, find the different tiers that the company offers, because every company has different tiers of equipment these days, because gone are the days where you are forced to just buy all pro level gear. There's all different types of levels. So yeah, I think those are the main key factors that people need to look at when they're, trying to figure out their budget or, what's worth spending more money on, because chances are one is going to be a lot more expensive than the other, depending on what piece of the kit is more value to you.
Yeah, and the guidance that I used to be given when I was first learning photography a couple of years ago, and what I also tell people these days is the money that you put into your kit, like it should always be weighted, generally speaking, more towards the glass. right? Because the
Right.
glass, and I've got lenses that I've had a decade here, and I still love them, right? They're like, I may not shoot with them all the time, but they're memories, and it's like a piece of artwork because it's precision glass, and I know I could do cool stuff with it, and I can put it on any camera body for the most part that I buy in the future. So it has as long as you take care of it, it has a long lifespan, whereas the camera bodies are great. I have old camera bodies that, I charged up my old Lumix GH3. Yeah, my old Lumix GH3 the other day. And I was like, wow, when I got this was state of the art. And I thought this was the best thing ever made. There was nothing else that could come out to beat it. And now there's the S1 series, and, Sony's got magic cameras that take pictures of other dimensions and all that. So
Exactly.
yeah. So glass, right?
Exactly. When I first got into photography, my first camera was the Nikon D3000. And at the time, that was just like, it was the newest and the hottest camera, aside from like the D90s. I felt like anybody who had a D90, I was like, whoa, like you're the coolest person ever. Like I would love a D90, but then, even now I still, when I just want to have fun, I want to shoot digital. I have a D200. And people look at me crazy when I say that, but I'm just like, the color that you get out of that sensor, it's one of the older Nikon sensors. You don't see that on the newer models. So that's why I say, like, if you really know what you're looking for out of your work, sometimes the older stuff might be for you. It might be a lot better than you think it is. New isn't always necessarily better. And I think when people start to find their footing, in this industry, in this community, you begin to realize, like, you know what, like a lot of these things don't matter, and a lot of it lies behind, within the person, and then the glass. Secondly, for me, I like to feel like it's the person first, and then the glass second, and then like the camera body last. Because I would still, if somebody gave me a Canon 5D Mark I or II, like still to this day, I would be so happy because that camera's amazing. We actually still sell a lot of those. We see a lot of those leaving and a lot of them coming in. So it's just really interesting, the way that just the secondhand sort of trends work. And I think people are finding a lot of this older gear, still really useful. I mean, look at all the young kids using, the RZs and the RBs. It's just really interesting to see, like, just the way that people appreciate like older gear.
Yep. Yeah. The ebbs and flows of it. Yeah. I used to shoot with a Mamiya RB67 almost every day. And I had a 645 that I used to shoot with too. I miss those cameras. It's just the theater of loading the film in the case, and then the clunk, and all that was just, just magic. All that effort that you had to go through in order to just take a photo,
the slap of that shutter is just the most satisfying sound. It's just, it's such a slap. It's great.
Yeah, I had one of those. I had I forget what the model was. I had a Bronica as well. Medium
I had
format.
a Bronica as well. I had the ETR, the ETRS. Yeah.
Yeah, I love those.
Yeah.
The thing about this occurred to me when you were talking, was you're talking about like old gear versus new gear and kind of that mindset. And yeah, it's weird because you look at these, and I'm in marketing, right? I used to work in marketing at Apple and Adobe and these amazing companies. So I understand the reality distortion field that these companies can present. And you look at that coming out of one of these camera companies, it's like, when you see this new version of the camera that you have show up, it instantly makes you feel like the camera that you have is trash, right? It's hot garbage, and I don't even want to be seen with this thing anymore,
Right.
because that new one does everything. When the reality is you probably haven't scratched the surface of what the camera that you have can do. If you go crack out that manual and go through it, you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know I could do that, But now you're lusting after features that you're probably not going to use on that bigger camera. And the reality of all of it is photons or light hasn't changed in what, 4.3 billion years, since, or before that, so the Earth was around 4.3 billion. Light has been the same speed, the same quality, the same physics, and these little incremental camera body changes are great and let you do cool things. But if you're just in it to master the art of photography, getting last year's model or even an older vintage model and just going to town with it is not a bad idea, right? Is that a good way to think of it, you think?
It's a great way to think of it because, again, a lot of things, people don't understand that they're barely scratching the surface a lot of times of this, super techy gear that's available these days. Like, I know for me, when, I had the X100V for like 2 weeks, I know that I barely scratched the surface of what that camera is capable of. And I feel like I did a lot, and I still didn't do all of, what the camera can do. And that's why I feel like people just need to, really maximize, like, their time with their kit. Like, just I feel like the more you just take it out, the more you use it, the more you do a little bit of research, even looking at YouTubers, just gaining more insight, you'll start to realize that, what, this kit is perfectly fine. I don't need to keep up with all the latest tech, because a lot of the times, if you go and read side-by-side reviews, you'll see that there are maybe 2 differences between that new model and that old model. And it's usually 2 differences that you don't even need, and you don't even use in your existing model, and that's what I've come to terms with, because I can't even tell you how many different kits I've had over the years, let alone the last like maybe 3. Since being at MPB, since MPB makes it so accessible to just swap kits, I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, people just need to really, really see what these actual differences are between the kits, because I feel like once you do that research, you'll realize that I don't need to change my camera every year or every couple months or every time there's a new announcement for a camera. You just don't need to do it.
Yeah, it's a different mindset, but again, that reality distortion field and that desire to get the new fresh thing is real, right? We feel it with the phones, and you watch the Apple presentation of the new phone that does a couple of things different than your current phone, but you still feel the gravity. I gotta have it. I gotta have that new phone, right?
I feel like it also comes with, aging a little bit. As you get older, you begin to you start to become a lot more secure in the work you do. You're very confident, in sort of like your take and your place in the photo world, and you start to realize that I don't need any of that stuff. That, like, this isn't for me. You begin to realize what is for you and what's not for you, and a lot of these releases just become irrelevant. And like you said, light hasn't changed in billions of years.
yeah, it hasn't. We have, and our tastes, and the other side of that. Yes, that's true. The physics haven't changed, but the zeitgeist of the culture evolves over time and changes from year to year, month to month sometimes, and what's acceptable changes, what's not acceptable, what's considered on the edge is different. So the creative part of stuff is where the fun is, I think. But the tools to get there are relatively consistent, right? The light, it's, all that stuff is consistent. It's you as the artist and the storyteller that is the variable in all this. So yeah, crazy stuff. So I'm going to throw a zinger at you to wrap this up. You ready for this?
Uh-oh. Yes, I am.
I've got to put you on the hot seat. Who makes the best cameras? Where's my list here? Nikon, Canon, Sony. Canny, that's a good name for a camera. Nikon, Canon, Sony, Fujifilm, Panasonic with Lumix, or Ricoh, or another one that I may have missed. Who makes the best camera? Where should my money be going when I go to mpb.com and I'm trading stuff in? Which one should I be buying?
So this is a tricky one, because I'm very unbiased, because I think that all of these brands are amazing in their own right.
Yep.
However, I will solely base this response on what I have experience with and what I know the brand to be, and it's going to be Canon.
Oh, okay. Why? Why Canon?
Canon, I feel like was at the forefront of really evolving what a DSLR is capable of. That when that 5D made its appearance onto the market 15 years ago, no one's seen anything like that. And then, you had the Mark II come about, and that was just the biggest phenomenon ever, because people found a camera that not only performs on a superior level when it comes to stills and, just photo, but it also did video extremely well.
Yep.
And the accessibility of, the array of different lenses that you have, but then that L glass, that amazing, beautiful red ring around the barrel of the lens. Like you just can't go wrong with that glass. And it's a huge part of the reason why a lot of that older glass, even the very first versions of certain Canon Prime L lenses, they're still really expensive. Even all of these years later, like maybe these lenses have been around for over 15 years and they're still hundreds of dollars, some of them even $1,000. And it's not even the newer versions of these lenses. It's the same glass that Canon's been producing for all these years. So I just feel like they cover so many different levels of photography, between the Rebel series, the crop sensor cameras, the full frame cameras. They have great bodies consistently throughout all their levels of, budgeted cameras. All of them perform well. There are, Rebel cameras that are amazing. There are the crop sensors that are amazing, like the 7D Mark II, amazing. It's phenomenal. And the fact that they have affordable full frame cameras, if people are looking to get into full frame photography so they can expand their lenses, it's just like you can't beat it. And then the weather sealing, the best.
Yeah.
The best.
Yeah.
I've been in snowstorms with my cameras, and it's never failed me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. That's the other thing, right? It's the subjectivity of the camera selection, because if you're in that mode and you're about to buy a camera, it could be overwhelming, right? And it depends on who you ask, because I could ask Tauhidah which camera, who makes the best cameras or which one you suggest, and it could skew towards Canon. I talked to another friend just a couple days ago, who's a diehard 30-year wedding shooter, and Nikon all the way. It's got to be Nikon or nothing, right? And then I talked to Lumix people, and of course it's got to be Lumix, and here's why. So, there's no, it's almost like religion. There's no one, it depends on who you ask, right?
But
the responses.
If I heavily got back into shooting digital photography full time, easily I would go to Fujifilm. I would. I think what Fuji is doing with mirrorless cameras is phenomenal. I think that they
and what do you mean? What are they doing that's phenomenal? Like, what is that? Put a box around that. What's phenomenal? Like, is it the color science? Because I hear that a lot from people that shoot Fuji, that they just swear by the color science. Or is it something else?
It's the color science easily. And just also that classic look. I feel like they didn't lose their identity with moving over into newer technology, and I love that. I love that their cameras look like traditional film SLR cameras. If I had to walk around with a digital camera, I would want it to look like that. I would want it to look like a Fuji camera. And then even just aside from that, the colors that the camera produces are gorgeous. And then they have these built-in presets that I swear by. I think it's genius. And the fact that, like, one of the reasons why I advocate so heavily for the X100V is because they have the option to make your own presets in camera that you can use, and they're a guide that will allow you to basically recreate your favorite film stocks and have your images look like that. And I just think that is absolutely incredible.
Wow. Wow. It's so much, so much. See, you got me excited now. I'm going to have Fuji up in a tab in a minute here. So, TD, I know we ran a little bit long, but this has been a fascinating conversation. Thanks for sticking in there with me. We didn't talk a lot about you and your work and the kind of things that you're working on. Give us a glimpse into the world of Tahiti. You gave us a kind of a peek in that you do a lot of film work, and we heard about some medium format film cameras that you might have on the shelf there. What's going on in your world?
In my world, everything revolves around film. Everything is about film for me. I just think that it's an amazing medium. It allows you to, the biggest reason I've gravitated to film being my primary way of creating images is because I like the slow pace. I like framing every single shot that I get, whether it's 16 shots, 6:4:5, or 10 shots, doing 6:7. Each shot is methodical. It's, you don't have this continuous shutter speed. It's intentional. It's very intentional, and it shows in the work. And that's the biggest reason why, I made that transition over the years to shooting primarily film, because I'm just like, I don't have to rush anymore. My subject, isn't going anywhere. It's mainly why I shoot portraiture, but I just think it's the preferred and perfect medium if shooting people is your preferred, genre of photography.
Love it. All right, Tahiti, let's wrap up with just the call to action stuff. So if people want to look at the work that you're doing, and maybe go check out the flow over at mpb.com, because now they're like, okay, I can liquidate this old camera I have and get this other camera, this Fuji X100V now that I want. Where should they go for all this, to follow you and to follow MPB? And also, what's next for you and MPB?
So if people want to buy, sell, and trade with us, they can visit our website. We give instant quotes, so we make the process very, very seamless, very easy. You can also get your gear sent into us. We cover the shipping label, so we just try to make sure that people are trading in and getting an experience that is as simple and easy as possible. People should be following us on Instagram to check out all of the cool content me and my team are always working very hard on. What people can expect is just a lot more from us, just in general. A lot more interviews, a lot more content being created, a lot of unique interviews, a lot of showcasing of our staff, because like I said, our staff are, we're filled with a lot of creatives. So yeah, I think those are the things to really look out for MPB, especially if you're a creative and you're a fellow photographer. And, a lot of these things are important to you. If you just want to just follow along to see, what's coming in and out of our doors, or just to see, what we have to offer in terms of, knowledgeable, advice and review, or if you want to see more reviews from me about cameras, you should definitely be following MPB on all of our platforms. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, Pinterest, TikTok. We're everywhere.
Oh, you're on all those. Wow. Okay.
Yes,
and you're the person that's controlling all that and making sure that MPB is ubiquitous on all those social networks, right?
Exactly. You're probably talking to me if you're reaching out to us on any of these platforms.
Oh, that's so cool. And what about you, Tahiti? What's next for you? What outside of MPB, what does your shooting world look like?
I do a lot of portrait work. If you didn't hear me talk about that for the last I don't know how many minutes. I do a lot of portrait work. I am currently working on a new project that is to be named and to be seen very soon. And yeah, if people want to take a look at my work, I have Instagram. It's Tauhidah Abdul on IG. And then I also have a website, which is also Tauhidah Abdul. I'm pretty consistent when it comes to being able to find me on all platforms. I use the same name across all socials. But yeah, if anybody ever wants to just talk film, I'm a big film nerd. So I'm always open to having those types of discussions.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, since you're a film nerd, we'll close it with, since I asked you about the best camera manufacturer, what's the best film stock that you're shooting with? And I know it could depend, right? Depending on what you're shooting, but best film brand and film stock.
Best film brand is Ilford.
Ilford. Look at that. I love Ilford. Yeah. Back in the day. I used to shoot Ilford and print Ilford on Ilford paper.
I think Ilford is amazing. They offer such a huge variety of black and white film. I think there's something for everybody when it comes to Ilford. And It's pretty affordable. Compared to our lovely friends Kodak, which is my favorite color film stock. Not a Fujifilm fan when it comes to actual film.
Oh, interesting.
I'm more of a warmer side of film than what Fuji offers. Fuji tends to be more in the green and blues, and I'm more of like the warm toned like browns and like very slight greens and things like that. But Portrait 160 is my favorite C41 film.
Interesting. I love it. Okay, I got to throw it out there before we close this off. I'm putting you on the spot. You have to come back on the podcast and do an episode all about film photography and your experiences and all that stuff. You down for that?
That would make me so happy.
All right. Look for that invite in your inbox soon.
Oh, I will. I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Tauhidah Abdul, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you. Congratulations on all the stuff that you're working on, and keep crushing it over at MPB. It's an amazing company. And I honestly, I don't take a lot of sponsors on This Week in Photo. And as you guys know, I was excited to partner and do this sponsorship because I truly believe in the company, and also it's an invaluable service that you guys are providing to photographers, especially now, right? With the current climate that we're in, is just lots of things are changing. So why not change your gear, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah, love it.
I completely agree with you. And even aside from just being an MPB employee, I was a customer before that, but I've been in this company for 3 years and I have several more to go. And yeah, I advocate for the brand as well as, work for them. So
love it.
It's very happy. It's very fulfilling.
Yep. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on, and we'll talk in our next episode with to be determined when the time is, but hopefully within the next month or so, you and I will sit down and talk film. This is TWiP. This episode was sponsored by MPB, the world's largest online platform for used photo and video kit. Visit mpb.com.